Hello, this is Vittal Gore. In this session, I would like to deal with Nissim Ezikel's poem, Night of the Scorpion. Before we proceed with the poem, we need to know about the poet. Nissim Ezikel is a prolific poet, playwright, critic, and a broadcaster. He is considered as the father of post-independence Indian English verse. He was born on 24th of December 1924 in a Jew family. His father was a professor of botany and his mother worked as the principal of her own school. Since schooling, he has studied the poets such as T.S. Eliot, Y.B. Yeats, and Ezra Pound, and the influence of these poets can be seen in his early works. Nissim Ezikel made a great contribution to the field of Indian English poetry. Some of his major works are Time to Change, published in 1952, 60 Poems, 1953, The Night of the Scorpion, 1953, The Third, 1959, The Unfinished Man, 1960, Hymns in Darkness, 1976, and Collected Poems from 1952 to 1988, published in 1989. The poem is nothing but the personal experience of the poet belonging to his childhood experiences. Here he depicts his mother who was stung by a scorpion and suffers almost for 10 hours very much consistently. The poet is trying to point out the motherly affections that she had for her own children. She has been always thankful to the God that the scorpion has parted its poison in her toes and spared her children. And that shows the motherly affection. And this is being the major theme of the poem, that is the Night of the Scorpion. I remember the night my mother was stung by a scorpion. 10 hours of steady rain had driven him to crawl beneath a sack of rice. Parting with his poison, flash of diabolic tell in the dark room, he risked the rain again. The peasants came like swarms of flies and buzzed the name of God 100 times to paralyze the evil one. With candles and with lanterns, throwing giant scorpion shadows on the mud-baked walls, they searched for him. He was not found. They clicked their tongues with every movement that the scorpion made. His poison moved in mother's blood. They said, "May he sit still." They said, "May the sins of your previous birth be burned away tonight." They said, "May your suffering decrease the misfortunes of your next birth." They said, "May the sum of all evil, balanced in his unreal world against the sum of good, become diminished by your pain. May the poison purify your flesh of desire and your spirit of ambition." They said. And they sat around on the floor with my mother in the center, the peace of understanding on each face. More candles, more lanterns, more neighbors, more insects, and the endless rain. My mother twisted through and through, groaning on a mat. My father, skeptic, rationalist, trying every curse and blessing, powder, mixture, herb, and hybrid. He even poured a little paraffin upon the beaten tow and put a match to it. I watched the flame feeding on my mother. I was the holy man perform his rites to tame the poison with an incantation. After 20 hours, it lost its sting. My mother only said, "Thank God, the scorpion picked on me and spared my children." Let us deal with the poem. In the very beginning of the poem, we feel that the poet himself is going to interact with the readers. He starts with pronoun I. Here, I stands for the poet himself. He says, "I remember the night my mother was stung by a scorpion. 10 hours of steady rain had driven him to crawl beneath a sack of rice." In stanza 1, the poet is mainly talking about the incident which has occurred in his childhood, and he was an observer there. He became a helpless spectator. Being a child, he could not help his mother at all, and he just became a spectator throughout the course of suffering that the mother had. In stanza 2, the poet says, "Parting with his poison, flash of diabolic tell in the dark room, he risks the rain again." The imagery and the personification used by the poet is very much considerable here. He says, "Scorpion has parted its poison in her toes." And the poet says, this particular happening is nothing but a flash of diabolic tell in the dark room. Because the incident has taken place in a dark room. Probably the mother went to the dark room to do some odd job, and she could not notice the existence of the scorpion there. And eventually, the thing happened. Is using this particular phrase, flash of diabolic tell. This particular happening, this particular situation is known to the villagers very much quickly. The message was spread among the villagers, among the peasants, just like a rumor, but it was a fact. And as soon as the villagers came to know that some sort of thing has happened there in the house of the poet, they started moving towards the house of the poet. As the poet says, the peasants came like swarms of flies. See here the usage of the language. Swarms of flies. In fact, we use the word swarms in the context of the flies whenever you find a group of flies marching towards, moving towards. That will be the appropriate word to be used for the flies. Probably we don't use for the human beings. But here, the poet is using for the peasants, the villagers. All the villagers, all the peasants, they were gathered around the mother who was suffering with the sting of the scorpion. And as soon as this gathered around her, almost all of them started praying God. And of course, they wanted to give some relief to the mother and the members of the family as well. So they started chanting the name of God. They started chanting the prayers so that will help the mother first to deal with the situation, first to tolerate the pains, and probably she will also get relief from the poison of the scorpion. The poet concludes this stanza with the expression like, "to paralyze the evil one." All the prayers, chanting of the prayers by the villagers and the peasants, that was only so that the mother will get some relief from all these pains that she has been almost for 10 hours or so. He says, "With candles and lanterns, throwing giant scorpion shadows on the mud-baked walls." Here, the phrase giant scorpion shadows is not indicating the shadow of the scorpion itself. It is indicating the shadows of the people that the poet has noticed on the walls, that also looks like the scorpion itself. As the mother is suffering with the sting of the scorpion and another existence probably in the same form. Maybe the people are giving more trouble to the mother than the trouble that she is already having with the pens from that particular sting. So, this way the poet's mind is exercising on these lines also, and so the expression is. Here the poet continues, they searched for him, he was not found. Now see, the poet repeats. The poet talks about the scorpion now again. He says, now the people started searching the scorpion in that darkness. Probably they have seen that mostly the scorpion must be here and there in the house itself. With the help of the lanterns, with the help of the candles, they started searching the scorpion, but they could not find it. Probably after the stung, the scorpion has gone outside the house. The poet says, they searched for him, he was not found. They clicked their tongues. With every moment that the scorpion made his poison moved in mother's blood, they said. See here, the poet is going to talk about the superstitious nature of the Indian people, very much particularly living in the countryside. Irrespective of the scientific development that we have in the course of time, even today, there are many people, those who have their superstitious outlooks. And here the poet is going to point out, with every moment that the scorpion made, here the villagers believe that the number of moments the scorpion made or will do, that will definitely affect the pains and the suffering of the mother. Scientifically, once the poison is parted by the scorpion, probably later on there will not be any contact between the scorpion and the body which is suffering with the pains. But here the people believe that the number of moments after the sting, the number of moments the scorpion do, that will also affect the suffering and the pains of the mother. So, this is how the poet is also talking about the superstitious nature of the Indian people. In the following stanza, the poet says, may he sit still, they said. May the sins of your previous birth be burned away tonight, they said. May your suffering decrease, the misfortunes of your next birth, they said. Here in this stanza, the poet is talking about two important things. One, the experiences that we have in this particular age, in this particular birth, and probably either the previous birth or the following birth, the people do believe that there is one more life even after this particular one that we experience today on this mortal world. And here the poet says, may he sit still, they said. May the sins of your previous birth be burned away tonight. So probably they are thinking on these lines, that this particular experience of the mother, it is going to compensate the sins of her life in the previous birth. See how the logics are, how the speculation is. See the superstitious nature of the people. Still they believe that whatever misdeeds, whatever sins we have done in the previous birth, probably we are going to pay for that in this particular birth, in the current age. Scientifically, it may not correlate at all. But as far as the poet is concerned, whatever he observed being the spectator, whatever he observed as the observer of the situation, he is just pointing out all these things one after the other. The people said, as long as the scorpion sits still without any movements, completely motionless, still the mother will suffer for some time, because that will give her an opportunity to get rid of or to burn her own sins that she done in the previous birth. In the concluding lines of this particular stanza, the poet says, may your suffering decrease, the misfortunes of your next birth, they said. Now you see, instead of talking about this age, instead of talking about the experiences of this birth, the people kept on talking about the previous birth and the coming birth as well. In the following stanza, the poet says, "May the sum of all evil balanced in this unreal world against the sum of good become diminished by your pain." In fact, unless we suffer, probably we don't get anything. And whatever you get after a lot of suffering, I think we know the price and value of that particular aspect that we gain in the course of time. And here, the poet is saying, may the sum of all evil balanced in the unreal world. Probably this particular experience that the mother is going to have, or is already going through the phase of suffering, she is going to prone the balance between whatever she did probably in the past and the present experience after the stung. As the people think that the kind of experience the mother is going to have, it will give her a relief from all the sufferings that she probably will have in this birth or the next birth. The poet says, may the poison purify your flesh of desire. In fact, human beings have so many will, wishes and desires and lots of hopes of life. And as the people are thinking here, maybe a superstitious kind of belief, and your spirit of ambition. Of course, we have ambitions. We want to fulfill the desires of our life. We want to achieve something in the course of time, and that gives us more and more energy to acquire what exactly we want in the future. They said that they sat around on the floor with my mother in the center. See now, the poet is going to describe the situation of his house, the situation, what exactly and how exactly the things are going to proceed. His mother suffering with the sting of the scorpion, she is in the center, and all the villagers, they are just around the mother, sitting here and there wherever possible and talking all these things, maybe their beliefs, maybe their own opinions. They may be talking about some or the other issues related to this particular event. They are least bothered about or for the sufferings of the mother, and moreover, they focus on their own perceptions of the particular happening. So the poet says, the peace of understanding on each face. The way they sat over there, that also indicates so many things. That has greatly affected the psychology of a child, that is, the poet. He says, more candles, more lanterns, more neighbors, more insects, and the endless pain. See here, how beautifully the poet has used the poetic device. He has repeated the word more, almost for 4 times in these 2 lines. He says, more candles, more lanterns, more neighbors. It means the people keep on gathering on the spot. As soon as they come to know that something has happened in this particular house, the people started moving towards. And this is how there is a huge crowd around the mother. And so the poet says, the people keep on gathering, Probably it is endless. And similarly, he also says that the pains of the mother, they are also endless. There is no stop. Almost for the last 10 hours, the mother is suffering, and there is no end to her suffering as such. My mother twisted through and through, groaning on a mat. See here, she is in the middle. She is sleeping over there. And the poet says, my mother twisted through and through and groaning on a mat. Her suffering are just noticed by the people gathered around. And here, our helpless observer, that is the poet, he is also just observing the things quite helplessly, because being a child, he could see that many number of people are there. Many number of people are there, those who are talking about the situation, those who are giving their own observations. But he could not do anything. In the next stanza, the poet says, my father, skeptic, rationalist, trying every curse and blessings, powder, mixture, herb and hybrid. He even poured a little paraffin upon the beaten dough and put a match to it. I watched the flame feeding on my mother. I watched the holy man perform his rites to tame the poison with an incantation. After 20 hours, it lost its sting. This stanza is very much contradictory to the previous stanza. As the poet says, my father, skeptic and rationalist. It shows a contradiction between the people, those who have gathered there, having superstitious perceptions, having superstitious mind. And on the contrary, the poet's father, being a skeptic and a rationalist, it means he has a scientific approach towards life. He is not going to believe that it is because of the sins of the previous birth, or else this kind of thing that the people are suggesting over there, that is going to give any relief to the mother. Moreover, he focused on the scientific approach, and he adopted the scientific approach as well to give some relief to his wife. My father, skeptic, rationalist, trying every curse and blessing. See here, whatever possible to the limits of the father, he was trying to give complete relief to his wife. He applied some powder, mixture, herb, hybrid, and whatever medicines possible that can reduce the pains of the mother. In the subsequent expression, the poet says, he even poured a little paraffin. Here, he is indicating to his father. He applied some paraffin, especially on the toe of the mother, and put a match to it. Then the poet says, I watched the flame feeding on my mother. See, he is just thinking as if a person who is set on fire, a person who is set on fire followed by a fire, probably that sort of reminiscences are there in the mind of the poet. And so he compares. He says, I watched the holy man perform his rites to tame the poison with an incantation. Generally, it happens with every human being. Whether you are a man of beliefs and disbeliefs, you may be a man of scientific approach, whatever it may be. And here we have seen one more aspect of the father's perceptions. One side, he is dealing with the particular situation in a very scientific way. On the other hand, he is also allowing a religious man, a priest, to perform some prayers so that the mother will get some relief from all these pains. After 20 hours, it lost its sting. This is the concluding couplet. So far, this particular stanza is concerned. The poet says, after 20 hours of suffering, she got a complete relief from the pains after the sting. And then the poet concludes this particular poem. The poet says, my mother only said, thank God, the scorpion picked on me and spared my children. See, I think this is the thematic concern. So far, this particular poem is concerned. The poet says, my mother only said, thank God, the scorpion picked on me and spared my children. That depicts the motherly affection, So, this is how the poet has concluded this poem with a reference to his mother's feelings and motherly affections for her children. Let us conclude the poem. In this poem, it is interesting to know that the poet narrates the incident as an observer. Basically, it is the spontaneous flow of the poet, and he is just having some reminiscences of the past, some memories of the past, especially of his childhood, and that he is going to narrate with the observer's point of view. And that has basically made this poem a subjective one, in which the poet is mainly talking about his own personal experiences in the childhood. Secondly, the poem can be interpreted with the perspectives of the villagers, with the perspectives of the Indian social ethos, and that can also give us a different look. Here we have seen that the mother is being stung by a scorpion. Probably it will be a difficult situation for a family to deal with. But here, the rest of the people in the community, in the society, in the village, they are not leaving this family alone. Moreover, they have extended their support. Moreover, they have shown some concern, and they have gathered in the house of the poet. And they have been consistently praying so that she should get relief from the pens. They have been giving their own justifications. They have been giving their suggestions. And this is how we have seen the typical Indian village and the temperament of the people so far such kind of happenings are concerned in the society.